Imagine, if you will, 160,000 mysterious mounds, some as big as the pyramids of Egypt dotting the Japanese landscape. These aren't just hills, though. They're Kofun, giant tombs from a time when Japan as we know it was just being born, the Kofun period, roughly 250 to 700 AD. So we're headed in this deep dive. We're going to explore how a local clan, the Yamato, rose to, well, become synonymous with Japan. Get ready to uncover some burial secrets, trace the influence of cultural exchange, migration, and yeah, we might even encounter a few horse-riding warriors along the way. So these Kofun, they're hard to miss, right? Huge, keyhole-shaped, especially the ones built for the rulers of the time. You don't construct something that monumental unless you really want to send a message. But here's what I find so curious. Almost all of them, like well over 99%, are bare on the outside. No decorations. In a society that clearly valued grandeur, what does that tell us? What did they choose to emphasize? What did they think? I don't know, maybe wasn't as important.
That's where the real story unfolds. I think not in the lack of outward decoration, but in what lies within. The artifacts buried inside these kofun, they paint such a vivid picture. You find bronze mirrors, for example, hinting at trade with China, and it wasn't just goods being exchanged, but ideas too. Then there are the weapons, swords, armor, horse gear. It really points to this warrior culture taking root.
Warrior culture. Okay, now that rings a bell. Does this tie into that whole idea of horse-riding invaders shaping early Japan? Was it like a full-on conquest, like something straight out of a history book action scene?
It's a popular theory, that's for sure. The idea that these skilled warriors on horseback just swept in from mainland Asia, bringing new technologies, new warfare styles, and that this allowed the Yamato clan to really rise to power. But, and here's where it gets interesting, while horses definitely play a role, and yeah, new skills were introduced, the archaeological evidence seems to point towards something a bit more gradual, more like an integration of those skills and cultures, rather than this sudden, violent takeover.
So less dramatic invasion, more of a slow burn, then with these skills and ideas gradually, filtering through.
That's fascinating. And speaking of those skills, I was doing a bit of reading and came across a detail that I found totally fascinating. Stigbugels. Essentially, early stirrups, right? They might seem insignificant, but they actually help us track how horseback riding techniques spread and became so important during this era. Talk about a tiny detail revealing a much bigger story. But back to the Kofun themselves. If it wasn't just warriors being laid to rest in these elaborate tombs, who else was deemed worthy of such a grand send-off? This brings us to those, well, they're pretty enigmatic, those Haniwa figure.
Yes, the Honeywell. Imagine this. You're approaching a Kofun, and instead of any kind of outward adornment, you're greeted by hundreds of these clay figures just standing guard. Warriors, animals, even houses, everyday objects, all crafted in clay, surrounding the tomb. It really is like a snapshot of their world, just frozen in time. Wow, what an image. But what can these Haniwa figures tell us about the people of the Kofun period? Were they just decorative? Or are we talking something, I don't know, a bit deeper?
Oh, they're far more than just decoration. The Haniwa, they provide us with a real window into the Kofun period's social structure, their beliefs, even their understanding of the afterlife. For instance, the variety you see in the figures, powerful warriors, farmers, all sorts, implies a complex society, a society with specialized roles. What I find particularly fascinating is how the style of these Haniwa, it actually evolved over time. Early on, you see more houses, animals, objects. But as time goes on, human figures, they become much more prominent. This shift, this emphasis from the communal to the individual, it could suggest changing religious beliefs, possibly even a growing focus on an individual's status in the afterlife. It's a puzzle, really, one we're still piecing together.
It's like a detective story, isn't it? We've got these massive tombs, these Haniwa figures that, well, they seem to be hinting at some pretty big changes in belief systems. And then, of course, we have this evidence of cultural exchange. It makes you wonder, how did the Yamato clan, how did they use all of this to basically go from, just one local power to rulers of a unified Japan?
It's a story strategy, that's for sure. Alliances and, well, a really keen understanding of the political landscape at the time. The Yamato, they were masters of diplomacy. They often played rival Korean kingdoms off against each other to their advantage. They knew how to forge alliances that would really benefit them. And I'll say they weren't afraid to make some pretty bold moves on the world stage.
So they were playing chess while I don't know, everyone else was playing checkers.
Mhm.
Are there like any specific examples of this strategy in action? Moments where you really see the Yamatos, I don't know, their shrewdness really changing the game?
Oh, absolutely. One that really stands out is in 366 AD, when the Yamato solidified an alliance with, let's see, it was the Korean kingdom of Baekje. This wasn't just some friendly pact either, it had teeth. It really strengthened their military might and opened up some vital trade routes, which, well, you can imagine how that shifted the balance of power in the region. It really paved the way for the Yamato to expand their influence.
So they secure this crucial alliance, and then what? Did they just like rest on their laurels?
Not at all. They set their sights further afield, I'd say. By the early 5th century, the Yamato had established diplomatic ties with China. Now, that was a major power move. It gave them access not only to, well, of course, to trade, but also to, the cultural and technological advancements of one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the world at that time.
It's pretty amazing to see how the Yamato were able to like weave together military strategy, diplomacy, and cultural exchange, all to really achieve their ambitions. And I'm guessing this all ties into the name Japan appearing on the scene later on.
Exactly. By the late 7th century, the Yamato had consolidated their power and, well, they adopted the name Nippon, Japan as we know it. This really marked their transition from, I would say, a regional power to a unified nation. A real testament to their strategic brilliance and their vision, really. It's like they were putting their stamp on history, saying, we're here, we're united, and we're a force to be reckoned with.
This unification of Japan, though, it wasn't just about the Yamato, right? We have to talk about the Kikijin.
Right.
Those immigrants from Korea who, well, they played such a vital role in shaping Yamato culture. It feels like there's a whole other deep dive hiding in there, honestly.
You're spot on. Waves of Korean immigrants, many, fleeing wars or just seeking new opportunities. And they didn't just settle in Japan, they enriched it. They brought with them skills, knowledge that would really leave a lasting impact, advanced pottery techniques, metalworking, even Buddhism. They were almost like cultural ambassadors, sharing their traditions, their expertise, really shaping shaping the very fabric of Japanese society.
It's like this grand tapestry being woven together with threads of different cultures all intertwining. And it reminds me of that story, the beautiful story from Korean legend about Yuno and Seo. They were a couple, and legend says their landmass broke off and drifted to Japan. They became rulers there. There's even a part about how the sun dimmed in Korea until they sent back gifts of silk woven by Seo. It just beautifully illustrates the interconnectedness of these cultures, even in their mythology. So we have this rise of the Yamato, this influx of skills and ideas coming in from Korea, and these fascinating hints about, early Japanese beliefs from those Haniwa figures. But as we move kind of towards the end of the Kofun period, we see a shift happening. It's a move away from those massive burial mounds towards these grand capitals, Asukakyo, Fujiwara-kyo, capitals that were built on, pretty much on Chinese models. What prompted this change? Was it just about keeping up with, architectural trends? Or does it signal something a bit deeper?
It's like they decided, you know what? Enough with the giant tombs. It's time to build something that will, makes a statement while we're still alive. But in all seriousness, what do you think is going on here?
I think it's a pretty pivotal moment, that shift from the Kofun to those capitals. It really reflects the growing influence from mainland Asia, particularly when it comes to politics and how they structured their cities. Japan was becoming a more centralized state, and those capitals, they served as centers of power, administration, that kind of thing. And this is crucial. Japan wasn't just, straight up copying. Think of it like this. They saw these impressive capitals elsewhere. They were inspired by the architectural styles, the ideas behind them, and then I guess you could say, they blended it all with their own unique traditions. They created something distinctly Japanese.
So a bit of like inspired by, but definitely not a carbon copy. They were taking what worked and, making it their own, as always.
Exactly. It speaks to their adaptability, their ability to absorb these new ideas, these new ways of doing things, while still retaining, their own cultural identity. And it's something you see, really throughout Japanese history. I think this pattern of, embracing outside influence, but then forging their own path.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? Giant tombs, mysterious clay figures, political maneuvering, cultural exchange. It really makes you think, what can we learn from this period, even after all these centuries? What echoes of the Kofun period do you think are still resonating in modern Japan?
Well, I think that's the beauty of exploring the past, isn't it? It gives us this lens through which we can view the present. And the Kofun period, it might seem like this distant era, but it's legacy, it's woven into the fabric of modern Japan. Look at the importance of Shinto shrines today. Many of them, their roots go all the way back to, well, to those ancient beliefs, those ancient practices we've been talking about. Or consider, the lineage of the imperial family. It traces its ancestry all the way back to, well, to those early rulers of the Kofun period.
Wow, it's incredible to think about, isn't it? How something that happened so long ago can still have such a, I don't know, a profound impact, I guess. It really underscores how understanding the past, even a past as, well, I guess you could say, as seemingly remote as the Kofun period, can really unlock some surprising insights into, well, into the world we live in today. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the mysteries of ancient Japan, I don't know about you, but I'm left with this sense of awe, the ingenuity, the adaptability, the enduring spirit of the people who shaped this absolutely fascinating period. It's a reminder that even in a world that was, vastly different from our own certain human experiences, they remain timeless. The desire to leave a legacy, the power of cultural exchange, and that fundamental drive to create something meaningful, something that would stand the test of time.